Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Timo Meynhardt, and I feel most honored to be invited to this conference to present some ideas we developed over the years at the center called Center for Leadership and Values in Society at the University of St.Gallen, where most honorable Osieger was one of the founding fathers, founding members. Before he left to Costa Rica, we worked together on those ideas I'm going to present today. My topic is public value, why should I care? Public value, the idea that, very simple thought, very pragmatic, even Aristotelian thought, individuals need a strong environment, a social context to grow and develop, and society needs strong individuals to be a functioning society. This very thought comes from the area where I'm coming from, which is called psychology. I admit I'm not an economist. I'm a psychologist happening to work in the management discipline, a discipline called management, and bringing in some ideas that basically boil down to the notion that perception is reality. Subjectivity has to be valued in much higher ways, and our public value research is about the question, how can we structure, how can we measure, how can we develop, analyze, and manage what we call public value. Why should I care? Public value starts and ends within the individual. The psychological thought, as I already mentioned, we need a social context nurturing our individual development. At the end, it boils down, as I said, to what I call perception is reality. And let's start with a little experiment. How many of you do know this simple? Please raise your hands. Okay, I said 85, 86%. This WhatsApp symbol signals something I might want to use to explain a basic mechanism which underlies our whole work. Being part of this messenger system by Facebook now, I guess, creates a lot of comfort, ease in communicating with each other, with families, bounding or spanning boundaries across countries for low cost, being part of a community, having this smart and easy way of communicating. This is the one part, what we call, let's say, the customer value. At the same time, what we see not only with young kids, children, pupils at school, but also with adults, it's a social phenomenon. Being part of a WhatsApp community might be something to be enjoyed with. Being not part might create lots of social pressure. Being part in such a community means also you get all those what's called those chain messages. You are supposed to social pressure if you see that you are constantly available and you haven't responded to another message by your colleague. In other words, it's not just a product to ease our way of communicating, it's creating a kind of an internal public, be it a classroom, be it a students group, be it a family. It's a kind of a public value to be created, which is not just positive, not just negative. On balance, it's probably a social phenomenon which needs further investigation. Let's assume we have a classroom with 10-year-old pupils. My daughter is one of those, responding to WhatsApp, and I, at the father, discovered what it means to not be in those groups and community, and she didn't allow me to join this one, for several social reasons, I guess. What this means is for those young children in this very moment, it is a kind of a public. It creates a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense of self-worth, and all those psychological answers to some phenomenon which is basically only a technology. But the main point I want to convey is that the WhatsApp example is pass pro toto for many, many products, be it a car, be it a bottle of milk, be it whatever, is much more than a use value, much more as a technology. And why companies should care about those what economists call, let's say, externalities, positive or negative ones, why they should care about social impact, why they should care about the societal consequences of their products, has been long exemplified by we call him the father of modern management, Peter Drucker, when he said early on that business has to justify not because it's good for business, but because it's good for society. Being good for society as a quest for legitimacy, as a quest for proving a license to operate, as we call it nowadays. And ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is in that this question is on the management agenda on a very high level. I suppose no single CEO at this global arena would simply neglect the issue that being good for society is something he or she should engage with. But what the hell does it mean, good for society? We might start with enlightenment, we might start with human rights, we might look at Chinese philosophy, we might look at Latin America traditions. At the end of the day, and this is our basic message at the center, we have to find a measure what's going to be good for society. And as I said in the beginning, we are not relying on objective measures, we are not relying on hard facts, but we ask people what the public value, let's say, of WhatsApp, Facebook, or other products might be. Therefore, the question mark is answered by a concept we call public value. If it creates public value in the eye of the public, then it might be good for society. This concept, ladies and gentlemen, should apply in Latin America, Switzerland, but also North Korea, or any other societal system we have seen in human history. This should not become a theory bound to some European westernized ideas, but open to different cultural systems, open to ideas which again boil down to a notion what's called public value is what the public values. This might be a mind-boggling, nasty, but nevertheless, I assume, looking at history, a realistic message that the contingency of human development over the centuries has shown that we are always vulnerable to several developments which might oppose current ideas, let's say what we developed in the 20th century. And in this very minute, we would only have to look at the news and look at what happens in the Ukraine, where all the progress of civilization we might have achieved in the last century are questioned, and we are hopefully not at the beginning of an escalation which might be detrimental to all of us. Therefore, public value, our concept in the psychological realm, how to measure, how to exemplify, how to analyze, starts with a notion what comprises public value. And I'm going to present the idea and then 3 different elements or 3 different instruments, how we do this these days at St.Gallen. First, let me start with public value is the contribution to society. It starts, of course, with task fulfillment. Whether or not, in the eyes of the public, corporation, an NGO, a party, a government, whatever, is seen as fulfilling its task in a competent manner, let's say in its core business. Does it do well in its core business? Might be exemplified from a balance sheet, profit and loss, whatever. But at the end of the day, this has to be interpreted, and the public has to follow that it's meaningful in terms of contribution to the economics or to the society as a whole. Second one, social cohesion. Does it contribute to group relations? Does it strengthen group identity? The WhatsApp example is a good one, where this is very strong community value for the community of a small classroom, or even a students' community, or whatever we call the public in this way. Next one, morality. Another one, of course, does it comply with ethical standard? Is it decent, depending on culture context as well? The third part, and last but not least, becoming more and more important, the 21st century, quality of life. Does it contribute to a positive experience? Does it increase our life quality as perceived on a subjective level in terms of well-being, happiness, or whatever you like to call it at the individual level? Those 4 lenses are used in our instruments. And of course, you can trade off. You can have good morality and good intentions and good contribution to quality of life. However, the task fulfillment is not as decent as you might want to expect. Therefore, it's this interplay with 4 different need-based public values which underlies our idea. Why we use this very open, you could call it even relativistic concept, is our insight that we have seen and we will see even more management paradigms. Here are just 4. They come and go. Shareholder value arrived, stakeholder value arrived at the scene, customer value, CSR, and you name it. All of those paradigms might contribute, might be seen as part of the public value. However, companies and politics have to make sure that they are not one-sided, that they integrate, that they find appropriate to a historical situation, appropriate answer to what is needed to build what is called, as Peter Drucker called it, a functioning society. Public value, in other words, is the idea how we could relate to what is the old discussion about the common good. Public value exemplifies the contribution to the common good in a way which is used to analyze not just products like WhatsApp, but also whole companies, without sacrificing what we already have gained, and bearing in mind what the risks are if you look at from just one perspective. To bring it to this conference theme, another thought experiment. Let's go back 50 years, 1965. Shortly before the Students' Revolution, the oil crisis had not yet arrived. Sustainability was not on the agenda as it is today. Nowadays, 2015, sustainability somehow has grown into the public value notion, has grown into the common good ideas. And that's the good news. The bad news is nobody knows what happens. And this conference is, of course, to make sure that it might become even stronger relationship. But we don't know we only know that from history we can learn nothing. History is open, of course, except we shape it. And therefore, sustainability should, of course, become a larger part of public value. But nowadays, we have just started the journey, and nobody knows who will be in the public value arena in 2065. Okay, the product one is what we call the GemeinwohlAtlas, the Public Value Atlas of Switzerland, where we asked almost 4,500 people to assess more than 60 corporations, government agencies, institutions like ours as well, to tell us where they see or whether they see any public value created from this institution. This is an auto screensaver and the auto screenshot. It will just walk you through how this looks like. It's a ranking. And of course, the ranking is a dance with the devil, but still it's better than dancing or bowling alone. It's another famous title. And this is a ranking where you can, of course, weight. They can look what happens when you say, well, morality is the main driver of the common good. Then you put morality at the first place, or you use all four ideas. As this is the index, so to speak, with a single score for each company, for each institutions. The financial institutions and pharmaceuticals were at the very bottom. The Swiss people didn't like the large banks in these days, as well as the pharmaceuticals. At the very top are typical, or the pillars of Switzerland, like SBB, public railways, or Post, or other very strong Migros in the grocery area, or Swiss Red Cross. Those got a good assessment by the Swiss people, and I can assure you those rankings are taken seriously by companies. They don't like to be at the very bottom. There's a strong, let's call it, cry for laugh by the ones who are at the bottom. This is number one. Number two is what we call, at the corporate level, public value scorecard, which is increasingly used by companies like those. A Swiss one, a German one, and a global one, FC Bayern Munich, who asked us to help them to determine the public value of a soccer club who wants to start and become a global player in terms of revenues, of course, but also in terms of the sports success, and they feared that they fear that they might lose their local public value by being a global player and losing its local embeddedness. And how to balance local embeddedness, being aware of the roots, and at the same time grow into the area of a global player, motivated them to apply this kind of public value scorecard and to see the trade-offs between morality or decency, what is politically acceptable, or hedonistic aesthetic, the positive experience, which plays a big role in the sports area like this, and of course also, does it make sense in terms of profits? The public value scorecard helps companies like the ones mentioned to determine and to listen to society in a way which takes into account the cultural contingencies in a way which creates numbers, and what gets measured gets done is the philosophy behind, of course. Also, in the last one, and I have to close, is a kind of a call for action, as also asked us to conclude with a call for action, which is we just develop what we call a public value award on a global scale, and I urge you to submit projects to win this global award. There are different categories and geographies, including Europe, Latin America, Asia, and so on and so forth, where on the basis of public value scorecard, you could submit sustainability projects, CSR projects, whatever you like to achieve and to win this global public value award, be it in climate change, aging society, empowering the individual, all those projects with impact on social progress, all those projects with impact on public value. To conclude with, show the world your public value. Thank you very much.